Imagine a world where the ultimate superpower isn't actually shooting fire from your bare hands.
Right.
It isn't moving literal mountains with the stomp of your foot, and it isn't defying gravity.
Yeah, the flashy stuff.
Exactly. Imagine if the most, world-altering, paradigm-shifting power a person could possibly possess was simply the ability to laugh,
Oh, wow.
to stay completely soft in a brutal environment, and to just exist entirely undefended in the present moment.
It sounds almost completely counterintuitive, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, especially when we look at history.
Sure.
Or even our own modern world, which, constantly equates real power with force or leverage or just a capacity for destruction.
Yeah.
But that inversion of power, that is exactly what we are exploring today. We're looking at a profoundly different way of engaging with a hostile world.
So welcome to today's deep dive. Our mission today is to really unpack this remarkable biographical text about Avatar Sorinun.
The laughing avatar.
Yes, a figure history remembers very, very affectionately as the Laughing Avatar. We are going to dig into her incredibly unique philosophy of staying soft in a world that was rapidly institutionalizing emotional suppression.
Which is such a wild concept.
It really is. And to understand her, you really have to start with the physical environment she created just by existing. So she was an air nomad, born at the Southern Air Temple, and the text points out this really beautiful detail. On the exact morning she was born, the wind itself changed.
Yeah, it's a striking historical note. There's this record from an observing monk at the temple who was out on the highest courtyard.
Uh-huh.
And he notes that the heavy brass bells up there chimed, but there was absolutely no gust of wind to move them.
Wow.
Right. He wrote a single line in his journal. He just wrote, "Something arrived today."
I love that so much.
It perfectly encapsulates her whole life. She was an atmospheric shift because, she wasn't a typical bender.
Right.
Even by the time she was like 7 years old,
Mhm.
she was unconsciously generating these tiny clockwise air currents.
Just automatically.
Yeah. She wasn't doing martial arts katas to make them happen. They just appeared whenever she laughed. Like this deep, resonant, below-the-chest laugh of genuine, unselfconscious delight.
And the way the world figured out she was an avatar is so drastically different from the usual, epic narratives.
Oh, completely.
There was no dramatic, catastrophic event where she suddenly bended 4 elements to save a village. She was 12 years old, and there was this ancient, incredibly intimidating sky bison at the temple named Pima.
And Pima judged everyone.
She judged everyone, but she just walked right up to a 12-year-old Sorina,
Right.
stopped, and bowed her massive head completely to the stone ground.
Wasn't a submission to power. It was a recognition of a deeply grounded presence.
Exactly. But the reason we are talking about her today, the reason her life is so relevant to you listening right now, is her central lifelong struggle. Sorayuna had to constantly choose whether to harden herself against the suffering of the world or remain entirely vulnerable to it. And honestly, whether you are managing a toxic team at work or you're just trying to survive the exhausting news cycle without going numb,
Which is so hard.
it's so hard. But that is a choice you are making every single day.
And it is not an easy choice.
Yeah.
To understand how Sorayuna ultimately changes the world, we have to look at how she actually learned to interact with the natural elements.
Right.
Her bending training wasn't just physical conditioning. It was the crucible that shaped her entire psychological framework.
Because her approach to the world was fundamentally atmospheric.
Exactly. He was open, receptive, porous.
Yeah.
And because of that, earthbending was her absolute hardest challenge.
Oh, I bet.
It requires a completely different mindset.
Right, because Earth requires you to plant your feet, brace your spine, and say to the world, this far and no further, I am the wall.
Yes.
Her earthbending teacher, Suda, was constantly pulling his hair out because Sorayuna fundamentally refused to impose her will on the rock.
She kept trying to commune with it.
Yeah, she would sit there, touching the stone, trying to listen to its density and its history, and Suda would just yell, stop communing with it, it's a rock, you just have to move it.
It perfectly illustrates her deep resistance to forceful imposition. To her, demanding the rock move felt like a violation of its nature.
Right?
But if we look at the inverse firebending, she had an entirely different experience. Fire is so often associated with destruction, consumption, weaponry.
Yeah, usually.
Yet it came to her completely naturally, which baffled her teachers. Her firebending master, Ikki, was shocked during their very first session.
What happened?
Well, Sorayuna didn't punch or kick to create a flame. She just breathed, and instantly manifested this warm, steady, perfectly controlled fire.
Wow.
She didn't view fire as a weapon to project outward at an enemy. She recognized it as an internal source of warmth.
Which is such a brilliant reframing. She compared it to those unconscious air currents she generated as a kid. To her, fire was just a different form of radiating presence.
Yeah.
And this brings us to the defining question Sorina kept asking all her teachers, the elders, the generals she met. She kept asking, why do people make themselves hard?
It confused her.
It totally confused her. She sees administrators, soldiers, and just regular citizens everywhere treating their own emotions as massive liabilities. They're constantly trying to armor up.
Right. And it's Monk Pelsang who gives her this profound psychological answer.
Yeah, I love this part.
He explains that people aren't necessarily malicious. They are terrified. They are afraid of the sheer size and unpredictability of big emotions.
Because they're overwhelming.
Exactly. Passion, deep love, profound grief, they feel enormous and uncontrollable. And Pelsang points out a really crucial distinction between a weapon and warmth.
Right.
Weapons have a clear direction. They have specific target, an actionable outcome. You know exactly what a sword is supposed to do. But warmth just radiates.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a targeted objective. It just alters the environment. And for people who are deeply afraid or traumatized by instability, radiating energy without a strict purpose is terrifying.
It feels out of control.
It is much easier, psychologically, to compress that internal fire into a sharp, directed weapon than to just live comfortably inside the vulnerability of its warmth.
That makes so much sense when you look at how we operate today. We treat our emotions like a targeted laser pointer.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Right. We want our feelings to have a specific use. We want our anger to fuel a protest or our empathy to solve a friend's problem. We want an ROI on our feelings.
Yeah, return on investment.
Exactly. But Sorayuna views emotion like a radiator in a freezing room. It doesn't have a target. It just exists to warm the space so everyone can breathe a little easier.
Yeah.
But I have to play devil's advocate here, because staying soft and acting like a radiator sounds beautiful. But for Sorayuna, an air nomad, there's massive existential danger in this philosophy.
No, definitely.
The air nomads were historically wiped out precisely because their openness and lack of military borders were viewed as a threat by harder, more aggressive nations. How on earth does she justify staying soft when it historically got her people killed?
Well, she doesn't ignore that history at all. That is the exact tension she wrestles with, and she actually brings that specific historical trauma to Pelsang.
And what does he say?
Pelsang's response is devastatingly clear and incredibly grounded. He tells her, yes, softness risks being hurt. It risks destruction. But hardness risks losing yourself entirely and not even noticing that you're gone. If you build an impenetrable fortress around your heart, you might survive.
Right.
But the you that survives is completely disconnected from the world.
You become a ghost.
Right. At least if you stay soft, you are actually present for your own life. You know what is happening to you.
Yeah.
And standing there, looking out over the enormous sky, Sorayuna makes a very conscious, calculated choice.
She chooses softness.
She isn't naive about the danger. She simply decides the cost of hardening is worse than the risk of vulnerability.
But the timing of her decision is wild, because she commits to this philosophy at the exact moment a massive opposing force is rising in the political landscape.
Yeah, the worst possible time.
A movement that views any emotional warmth not just as a liability, but as the literal root of all societal chaos. And the architect of this movement is a man named Rovin.
Right. And Rovin is a fascinating psychological study. We have to understand that he is not some cartoon villain waking up and deciding to be evil.
No, not at all.
He grew up as a highly sensitive, deeply feeling child in a family of rigid, minor political officials. His parents found his feelings excessive.
They couldn't handle him.
Exactly. He cried easily, he formed deep emotional attachments, and he was constantly disciplined for it. He was told, repeatedly, that his emotional reality was a problem that needed to be solved.
Which is heartbreaking.
It is. So what does a child do to survive that environment? He adapts. Over decades, Rovin systematically suppressed his emotions until he managed to feel absolutely nothing.
He just shut it all down.
He built a perfectly smooth, functional, emotionally quiet interior.
He optimized away his own humanity. And because it successfully stopped his personal pain, he projected this coping mechanism onto the entire world. He founds what becomes known as the silence movement.
Right.
The core philosophy is essentially true civilization requires subordinating all emotion to pure, rational governance. A world governed by feeling is inherently unstable. It's prone to wars and unpredictable.
Yeah.
But they didn't just write theoretical essays about Stoicism, they completely engineered society around it. They created literal atmospheric infrastructure to physically dampen the emotional climate of entire cities.
Yes. The mechanics of this infrastructure are chilling because they are so subtle. They weren't using mind control.
Right.
They were manipulating ambient air pressure, altering acoustic resonance in city squares, and engineering the water supply to literally slow down human heart rates.
That is so creepy.
They dampened the physical sensations of anxiety, excitement, or passion. They created a physical lethargy that masqueraded as peace. Walking into one of Rovin's cities was like walking into an enormous anechoic chamber or like a sensory deprivation tank. It just slowly, quietly deadened the populace.
I'm going to stop right here, actually, because I think a lot of people listening might have a very conflicting reaction to this.
Oh, definitely.
Because if you are someone who is completely burnt out, if you are exhausted by the constant outrage on the internet, the unpredictability of the economy, the sheer noise of the modern world,
There's a lot.
Rovin's sealed room actually sounds incredible.
It really does.
It sounds like a vacation. He's promising an end to conflict. He's pitching stability, safety, and quiet. Look at our obsession today with stoicism or life hacking our way out of bad moods to be more productive. If crime goes down to zero and people stop screaming at each other, isn't Rovin kind of the good guy? Isn't he just giving people a break from the pain of caring too much?
Your reaction is exactly why the silence movement spread across the continent without firing a single shot. It is deeply appealing to an exhausted world. Rovin genuinely believed he was the savior. And when Sorayuna and Rovin finally meet, and this is their one and only meeting, she doesn't attack him.
She doesn't fight him.
No, she actually validates his intention. When she walks into his office, she sits directly on the floor so she can physically read the atmospheric pressure of the room.
Okay.
And she realizes that Rovin's presence feels like a room with all the windows closed on a blisteringly hot day. It is stagnant, oppressive, and totally sealed.
A suffocating environment, but one he views as completely secure.
Exactly. And she tells him, I know you were a feeling child. I understand you were trying to protect people from getting hurt the way you were.
She sees right through him.
She does. But she completely dismantles his philosophy with one devastating point of physical reality. She tells him that the emotional self that gets suppressed doesn't just evaporate. It doesn't magically disappear just because you built a quiet room. It stays. It accumulates in the dark. She warns him that unexpressed emotion becomes like a held breath that's been held entirely too long.
And the longer you hold your breath, the more your lungs burn until your body forcefully takes over. That is such a visceral way to describe emotional suppression.
Yeah, it really is.
But Sorayuna's warning doesn't stop the movement. So for the next several years, she basically goes on a grueling tour of these deadened, engineered cities.
Right.
She doesn't fight the guards or smash the infrastructure. She literally just sits in public plazas trying to be an atmospheric presence of warmth. She tries to naturally circulate the air, laughing, talking to people, trying to remind them what feeling alive is like.
Which is exhausting.
Yes. Pushing against a hardening world day after day, year after year, takes a massive toll on her.
It absolutely breaks her down. By the time she is 34, she hits a wall of profound empathy fatigue.
Yeah.
She is in a capital city heavily influenced by the silence movement, and she notices something terrifying. Her bending is requiring conscious effort.
Oh, no.
The spontaneous, joyful air spirals she's produced since childhood have completely stopped.
Oh.
She visits a young artist in the city, and the painter shows her a new series of canvases. They are beautiful, hyper-realistic paintings of the city, but they depict it as a flawless, sealed vessel.
Like a jar.
Exactly. There are no doors, no windows, no way in or out.
And staring at this incredibly bleak painting, Sorayuna has this horrifying realization. She can't even cry about it. She is totally numb.
Yeah.
She realizes she's been managing her grief instead of actually feeling it. In her desperate daily effort to fight the hardening of the world, she has inadvertently started to harden herself. Her radiator is completely out of fuel.
Which forces her to flee.
Yeah.
She knows she is losing her connection to the elements, so she retreats far to the north, completely alone, up into the ancient blue glaciers.
She needs the cold.
She is seeking the old air, the atmospheric currents that predate human nations, infrastructure, and political movements. And up there in the bitter, freezing cold, the numbness finally cracks.
She breaks down.
She breaks down. And she doesn't have a delicate spiritual cry. She weeps ugly, unmanaged, exhausted tears.
Real tears.
Yes. And it's in this vulnerable state that the text describes her encountering a presence, something vastly older than any spirit she's ever interacted with.
Okay.
Doesn't use human language. It communicates entirely through massive, ancient atmospheric shifts in the ice.
And she essentially confesses to this ancient presence. She admits that for years she had been trying to ration her joy.
Right.
She was treating her emotional energy like a smartphone battery. She was terrified that if she gave it out too freely to these dead-end cities, she would drain to zero and have nothing left to heal the world.
She thought she had to conserve it.
She thought she had to conserve her softness. And the spirit responds with the ultimate epiphany of her life. It communicates to her, it is only alive when it is in use.
It fundamentally flips her understanding of emotional energy. What you try to preserve by hoarding it or protecting it from the messy reality of use actually stagnates and dies.
I think we all make Sorya's mistake. We think empathy or joy or patience is something we have like an inventory.
Like a bank account.
Exactly. If I spend too much empathy at work, I won't have any left for my family. But on that glacier, Soryuna realizes that joy isn't a depleting resource, it's a muscle.
Yeah.
It's a renewable choice made in the present tense. It doesn't require a perfect environment to justify it. You don't wait to be happy until the world is fixed. You deploy joy because the world is broken.
Precisely. It is an active, ongoing practice.
Yeah.
And the exact moment she accepts this, the moment she stops trying to manage or ration the air moving through her.
She laughs.
She laughs. Up on this desolate glacier, she laughs her real, deep, below-the-chest laugh. And instantly, the warm spirals of air return. She reclaims her softness by refusing to protect it.
But while she is up there relearning how to be human, Rovin's silence movement reaches its terrifying logical conclusion. Right.
They complete their masterpiece, the ultimate atmospheric infrastructure in a major capital city of 4 million people.
This is the climax of the text, and it's where we see the physical consequences of Soryuna's warning about the held breath.
Yeah.
Rovin's system is fully online. It's the day of an annual citywide renewal ceremony, which historically was a time of wild, chaotic, highly emotional public grieving and celebration. But this year, under the new dampening infrastructure, 4 million people gather and sing the ceremonial songs perfectly. There is zero variance.
Zero emotion.
Zero. It is technically flawless, and it is utterly, terrifyingly dead. But Rovin is about to discover the fatal flaw in his engineering. The laws of thermodynamics apply to human psychology.
Right. Because energy cannot be destroyed, it can only change forms. Rovin believed that suppressing a feeling destroyed it. He thought his sealed room was empty.
He really did.
But 4 million people suppressing a lifetime of grief, joy, and anxiety creates massive kinetic energy. And because they aren't expressing it, that energy has to go somewhere. It bleeds into the environment as raw atmospheric friction.
Yes. The collective, unexpressed emotional pressure of 4 million human beings literally presses against the engineered system, and it creates a catastrophic pressure front.
The upper atmosphere above the city actually begins to tear.
The sky physically looks fractured and wrong.
The engineered artificial dampening channels violently clash with the natural massive weather currents, initiating a localized atmospheric collapse.
Which is terrifying.
It is. Rovin is standing on the roof of the central governance building, watching the sky break apart over his perfect city. And the horrifying realization sets in. His premise was entirely false. A sealed vessel isn't peaceful. It's a bomb waiting to go off.
And right as this atmospheric bomb is about to level the city, Soryuna arrives.
Perfect timing.
Now, anyone who knows Avatar lore knows that the Avatar state is typically this awe-inspiring, terrifying display of martial dominance.
Glowing eyes, tornado of elements.
Exactly, a godlike entity arriving to crush a threat. But Soryuna does the exact opposite. Her ultimate display of power is radical transparency.
She walks directly into the central square beneath this tearing sky, and she opens herself completely. The Avatar state arrives not as a weapon of localized destruction, but as an infinite expansion of presence.
Wow.
The ancient marks on her skin glow, but instead of conjuring a destructive storm to fight the unnatural pressure, she creates enormous, slow-moving, luminous spirals of warm air. And from every single garden, window box, and tree in the entire city, millions of flower petals gently lift into the air.
And she essentially turns herself inside out. She makes her entire emotional interior visible and palpable to 4 million people. She broadcasts it all into the atmosphere.
Right.
Her grief for the people she couldn't reach, her exhaustion from fighting the movement, her deep loneliness. But most importantly, her unreasonable, completely renewable, bottomless love for a deeply broken world.
Yeah.
It is a massive, continent-wide shockwave of undefended vulnerability. And when this wave hits the populace, what happens?
It acts as the release valve for the held breath. The citizens just start crying. But it isn't from terror or panic. It is the profound, overwhelming relief of a numb limb finally getting blood flow again.
The pain of the thaw.
Exactly. People drop to the ground, they turn and hold whoever happens to be standing next to them. The psychological dam breaks. And because the presence of raw, honest, messy emotion is so overwhelmingly powerful, it physically overloads and shatters Rovin's dampening infrastructure.
The machines just break.
The machines literally fail because they cannot process the sheer volume of human reality.
But wait, releasing 11 years of suppressed grief, anger, and trauma all at once? That sounds incredibly dangerous. That sounds like it could tear a society apart even worse than the sky breaking.
It is incredibly dangerous. And no one feels that danger more acutely than Rovin.
Because he's watching it all.
He is still up on the governance roof. And the wave hits him too. 11 years of his own aggressively suppressed grief violently breaks through his perfect, smooth exterior. He falls to his knees, weeping uncontrollably. He realizes in that moment that he took his own childhood wound, the deep pain of being a sensitive kid in a harsh family, and he built a global infrastructure around it. He called his own trauma civilization.
That is so profound.
And Sorina climbs up to the roof. She doesn't arrest him. She doesn't gloat. She simply sits down next to him on the cold roof, lets him cry, and asks quietly, "Did it work?"
What a question.
And through his tears, Rovin finally admits the truth. "No, I am not safe from it."
All his brilliant engineering, all his schools of thought, failed to protect him from the fundamental reality of being human.
And Sorina just tells him to stay there, to let it hurt. Because thawing out frostbite is agonizing, and it is going to take a long time.
Which perfectly transitions into the aftermath. Because Sorayuna didn't defeat Rovin in some epic martial arts boss battle, she simply outlasted his illusion. And the real world doesn't magically fix itself after the climax. The hard work is what comes next. It takes 7 incredibly unglamorous, tedious years to physically dismantle the city's atmospheric dampeners and reteach the populace how to regulate their own emotions.
And the most compelling part of this restoration is that Rovin himself leads the dismantling.
Wait, really?
Yeah. He understands the poisonous infrastructure better than anyone alive. He becomes a patient to the various healers in the city. And he is a notoriously difficult, argumentative, rigorous patient who questions everything.
I can imagine.
But he slowly, painstakingly, does the work of thawing out his own compressed layers of trauma. And Sorayuna doesn't rush this. She ensures the healing happens at the exact pace the community can naturally manage. There is no forced efficiency. She understands that genuine structural healing is messy and slow.
So what does this actually look like for the world she leaves behind? 2 years after the sky almost broke, Sorayuna goes back to visit that young painter.
Right, the one who painted the sealed vessels.
Yes. And the new paintings in the studio are completely different. The painter gives Sorayuna a new piece. It shows a figure, mid-turn, standing in a doorway. They are stepping out of a highly controlled, flawlessly precise room and walking into a wild, overgrown garden full of blowing petals.
It's the perfect metaphor.
It really is.
It captures the exact messiness of her philosophy. The figure is caught between what had been safe and what was becoming real. Remaining soft, remaining open is a constant daily process of turning toward the wildness of the garden, even when the controlled room feels so much safer.
Sorayuna ends up living a very long life, making it all the way to 83. And her final moments are beautifully cyclical.
Yeah.
She is back at the Southern Air Temple, sitting on the exact same stone ledge she sat on as a 7-year-old child. The historical text describes the old wind returning from the glaciers. She laughs her deep, below-the-chest laugh one last time.
The bells chime.
The heavy brass courtyard bells chime without a gust of wind, exactly like the morning she was born, and she simply passes on.
And her legacy is so distinct from almost any other historical figure we study.
How so?
Well, history usually remembers powerful people for the wars they ended, the borders they expanded, or the tyrants that they crushed. Sorayuna is remembered for what she started. She catalyzed a collaborative, continent-wide healing network.
Wow.
Roven's silence movement became nothing more than a cautionary footnote in textbooks about what happens when individual unprocessed trauma dictates civilizational philosophy.
She really proved, definitively, that emotional openness is not a structural weakness to be engineered away. It is the fundamental atmospheric condition required for genuine human connection.
Exactly.
Which brings us entirely back to you listening to this right now. Think about the sealed vessels in your own life. Where are you holding your breath?
Yeah.
Are you suppressing your frustration in the name of workplace efficiency? Are you biting your tongue to keep the peace in a relationship? Are you trying to engineer away your own anxiety just to protect yourself from burnout?
Which we all do.
We do. But what would happen if you stopped trying to aggressively manage the air in the room and just let it circulate? What would change if you chose the superpower of staying soft?
I think the most profound way to leave you with that question is the final handwritten note found among Sora Yuna's possessions at the temple.
Oh, I love this note.
It perfectly builds on that monk's journal entry from the day she was born. Sora Yuna wrote, "Something is always arriving. That is the whole point.
Yeah.
If joy, grief, frustration, and love are constantly, relentlessly arriving, and your interior life is a room, are you going to spend your entire existence exhausted guarding the door? Or are you finally going to step out of the way and let the wind blow through?"
You know, that makes me think of one last thing to leave you with, building off of that.
What's that?
If you actually stop guarding that door and you just let the wind blow through for long enough, eventually the wind is going to erode the walls themselves. So maybe the ultimate goal isn't just to be a room with open windows. Maybe it's to realize you were never a room at all. You're just part of the weather.